What's going on? I'm back here with Jonah Berger, who is one of, if not my favorite people in this industry. I think I've been aware of your work for about 10 years, and we're going to be talking about that as well. I told Amber on our podcast, I was like, yes, one of my idols said yes. So I'm psyched to talk to you. And I'm psyched to talk to you about this concept of immeasurable word of mouth and ways to like what makes it so effective. Is it so effective? But also just ways to like tactically like just create it, and how we get obsessed with stuff we can measure but the immeasurable stuff gets ignored as a side. So for anybody who doesn't know Jonah, author of Contagious, Invisible Influence, Catalyst, most recently the book Magic Words. For history, I became obsessed with your work when you were just a lowly professor before you were an author. And I was researching social contagion theory, email mediated communication, and I came across your research, and that's when I first reached out to you, and I started actually taking your research and like trying to do stuff with it, in the field. So this is kind of a fun full circle moment. So thank you for being here, Jonah. I'm excited to
Thanks so
talk
much
to
for
you.
having me. I appreciate it.
Talk to me about word of mouth. Talk to me about why word of mouth marketing is so effective. Because I look at you as the leading researcher in the world and thinker when it comes to word of mouth.
Yeah, so I think it's important to start by saying that word of mouth is not new, right? Word of mouth has been around since language started, right? And you could even argue that word of mouth has been around, not word of mouth, but maybe word of gesture before language started, right? One caveman might say, hey, don't go that way, go this way. There's more food there. People have been sharing information with others, doing social transmission since almost the inception of human life. It's changed though, right? Today now, at least a portion of it happens online.
Yep.
And what's neat about it happening online is now companies can see it, right? So when my first book, Contagious, came out in 2013, I would give a lot of presentations where I get a lot of pushback on just the idea of word of mouth. Companies would say, look, I've been investing in advertising. I know how to advertise. I know how to use paid media. What is word of mouth? Why should I care about word of mouth? I can't control it. Are people going to say negative things? Flash forward now 10 years, and most of these companies have changed the way they do marketing communications altogether, right? Television advertising, nowhere near as important as it used to be. Radio, print, way down, right? Most companies are spending much of their budgets on digital media, much of it online, on social media, whether it's advertising on social media or hiring so-called influencers, which are another form of paid media, but at least seem like word of mouth. And so I think companies have now realized that word of mouth matters because they can see it, right? They can go online and see, look, thousands of people are saying things about my product, my service, my idea. How can I get more of that? How can I get more people saying positive things about me? Because word of mouth is much more effective than traditional advertising for a couple of reasons. First, it's more trusted, right? We know that ads are trying to convince us. We know they're trying to sell us something. And so we're not necessarily going to listen to what they have to say. We don't necessarily believe them because we know it's self-interested. Whereas our friends, our colleagues will tell it to us straight. They'll say, hey, I love this product, or I hate this product, or that service was really well, but customer service wasn't so great. They'll tell it to us straight. And so because of that, we're much more likely to listen to what they have to say. But the second benefit of word of mouth is that it's so targeted, right? And digital advertising has gotten a lot more targeted over the past 15 years or so than it used to be. At the same time, though, no one knows someone better than their best friend.
Yes.
And people don't share things with other people that they don't think they'd find interesting. And so the big benefit of word of mouth is someone's passing on your product, your service, your idea to someone else they think might like it, right? They've gone through their social network to say, oh, of all the people I know, these people are the ones that will be interested in it. And so as a result, word of mouth tends to reach really interested ears, right? A new customer that comes in through word of mouth rather than traditional ads has about 20% higher customer lifetime value because someone found folks that are really going to like what you have to offer. And so then the only question that's left is how do we get it, right? We know it's valuable. We know it's trusted. We know it's targeted. We know it's a lot cheaper than traditional advertising. And this is the big benefit for
If anything,
startups or
it's more
small
difficult,
businesses.
isn't it?
Yeah, you don't have to have a big budget, but the question then becomes how to get it.
Yeah. Yeah, if anything, it's more expensive. I mean, I think about trust. I think about reputation a lot. because to me, those are the most valuable assets anybody can build today. But they're so valuable because you can't cheat it. You have to own it. It can't be bought. Even even you mentioned influencers, right? I think it was the 2021, might have been 2022, Nielsen Trust in Advertising showed that less than 1 in 4 consumers trust anything an influencer says.
Yeah.
And so you can't even buy like a micro influencer to say good stuff about your thing. People trust companies' websites. What a company's website says, people trust that more than an influencer talking about that company's product.
Yeah.
It's really quite astounding. So talk to me about a few quick ways. Like I always think about triggers when I think about you, and this idea of, hey, if we want to maximize the amount of impressions that we own to take over mind share for a product or service or idea, you can try to buy every single impression. You can try to own every impression via a piece of content, but content these days is pretty short term for the most part. Or you can create a trigger in their world. So talk to me about those, because those are some of
Yeah.
the things that I've had the most fun with after reading.
Yeah, so just stepping back for a minute to sort of
Okay.
contextualize this term that triggers that you're talking about. So, we know we want word of mouth. How do we get it? Often it might seem random, luck, chance. It's not. There's a science behind why people talk and why they share. We've looked at thousands of pieces of online content, tens of thousands of brands, millions of purchases around the United States and around the world. Again and again, we see the same 6 factors come up. And so in Contagious, I put them in a framework called the STEPS framework. The S is for social currency, the T is for triggers, E is for emotion, the first P is for public, the second P is practical value, and the second S is for stories. And these are the psychological drivers of why people talk and why they share. It's not about B2B versus B2C. It's not about products versus services versus ideas. It's not about expensive things versus cheap things. It's about why do we share stuff, right? Why, when we come back from vacation, do we talk about some parts of vacation and not others? Why do we share some things that happened today and not others? Some things that are going on this weekend and not others. There's a science behind it, right? Just like there's a science behind decision making, there's a science behind word of mouth. And so to dive into triggers a little bit, the idea of triggers is very simple. Much of what we do is not just based on whether we like that thing or whether we appreciate it or anything along those lines. It's about whether we're thinking about it or not. Right? There may be a restaurant in whatever city that you live in, and you love that restaurant. Right? It's one of your favorite places in town. But if you don't think about it when you're going out to eat, you will never go there, because a big chunk of purchase is consideration, right? Not just do you like something or not, but are you thinking about that thing or not? Because if you're not thinking about it, you're going to be really unlikely to go there. Same with word of mouth, right? If we're not thinking about a product, a service, or idea, we may love that thing. If we're not thinking about it, we're not going to talk about it. And so why are things top of mind? Well, some reasons are that they just happened, right? So, if I just played basketball and you ask me how I'm doing, I'm probably going to tell you about basketball because it's top of mind. If I just used a certain product or a certain service or came back from a certain place on vacation, I'm more likely to talk about it. 2 weeks from now, probably not as likely to talk about it, right? Why? Because memory decays, right? Things that are right now, that are recent, tend to be top of mind. Other things come top of mind as time passes and memory decays. But as you said already, triggers in the environment, subtle cues, subtle triggers can make things top of mind. I'll give you an example. They did a study a few years ago where they changed the music that played on the PA system in the grocery store. So imagine walking around the grocery store. Some days they play French music, some days they play German music. What happens? Well, they find on days they play French music, sales of French wine go up. And on days they play German music, sales of German wine go up. And beer, by the way, go up. Is it because the music changed what wine people like? No, they like whatever they like. The reason is because the music made that type of wine top of mind. Hey, sometimes I drink Italian and sometimes I drink French, but I'm hearing French music that makes me think of French wine that I like, and I'm more likely to buy it. And the same is true with word of mouth, right? If I said peanut butter and, you'd probably think of the word jelly. If I said rum and, you'd probably think of the word Coke. And so things in the environment can make us think about things that aren't there, right? Peanut butter reminds us of jelly, rum reminds us of Coke. And so by linking ourselves to stuff in the environment, we can make our product, our service, our idea more likely to come to mind and lead people to be more likely to talk about it and share it and have it be more likely to catch on.
I love that example of the wine. One of the big, so I mean, you don't know this, but I have a book. We actually just sent in a proposal today
Oh,
called Ambitious Choice.
congratulations.
Thank you. And it goes over the 13 timeless lessons, right, in business. And one of the main principles that I talk about in that is that the majority of consumers are ignorant towards your product or service. And they're not stupid. Ignorance is domain specific, right? We're all ignorant towards the vast majority of things that we buy. There's just
Yeah.
too much to know. You're not ignorant towards the thing that you do and maybe a few other select things, but you're ignorant towards everything else. And so you largely satisfice and you make a good enough decision. You just won't admit that to yourself. So I talk about that and give some frameworks around that stuff. But what you just hit on with the wine example, I think is a good example of that, where most people buying wine have no idea what the heck they're buying. We did this thing with one of my jerky friends years back who was talking about this super fancy wine that he bought and, talking about all the reasons why this wine is the best. And then we switched the bottles without him knowing. And with some like $6 wine,
Yeah.
and asked him how it was. And he was like, oh, the floral scents and all this dumb,
Yeah.
all this dumb crap. It's just, I mean, there's just too much to know. Most people that buy wine know very little about wine. And winemakers know that, which is why they give them all brands and whatever. But what you just gave an example of is so brilliantly simple, because what could like a German beer maker do then? They could just go to beer stores and tell them to play German music.
Yes.
So let's say, restaurant, do you have any other examples of something
Yeah,
like that
sure.
where you've
Yeah.
seen that? Just don't talk about Rebecca Black and Friday. That's
Yeah.
all I ask.
So let's distinguish between two things, right?
Okay.
What you're talking about people are ignorant. Someone might call that awareness, right? They don't realize that something exists. And when we think about the customer journey, or you turn the journey on its top and call it a funnel, awareness is usually the first stage of that customer journey, right? If you're not aware of something, there's no way you can buy it. There's no way you
Yes.
can take an action, use it, whatever it is. You have to have awareness. But awareness by itself isn't enough, right? You have to have consideration and you have to have action as you move down that journey or that funnel. And one thing that's required for consideration or action is what a psychologist might call accessibility, right? There's a lot of stuff we're aware of, but we're not thinking of. I'm aware that that restaurant in town that I love exists, right? If you say, hey, do you like this restaurant? I'll go, oh my God, I love that place, right?
Right.
But what triggers are shaping is accessibility. I love it. Every time you tell me about it, I will tell you I love it, but I'm not thinking about it all the time. It's not top of mind, right? Our mind is like a list. Some things are at the top of that list and others not so much. And so subtle cues or triggers in the environment can shape what we think of, which can shape what catches on. I'll give you two examples.
Yeah, I love it.
A number of years ago, KitKat sales, candy bar sales, were down by 25%. People loved KitKat, but they weren't buying it. So the brand is going, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? So they end up deciding, we'll do something interesting. We'll link KitKat to coffee. So they have a big campaign, KitKat and coffee, a break's best friend. Having a coffee break, have a KitKat, think about coffee, think about KitKat, coffee and KitKat and coffee, best friends forever.
Yeah.
Right? Now, what does this campaign do? It links the two things so that now when you see coffee, you're more likely to think about KitKat than you did before. Does everybody think about KitKat every time they drink coffee? No. But because so many people drink coffee and so many people think about KitKat when they drink coffee, sales go up from $300 million to $500 million. Huge sales increase, not because they made people like it anymore, right? They still like it or not, right? Some people don't like it, but made them think about it, made it more accessible. I'll give you one more example.
Let me tell you, because I don't think I ever told you about this one, but when I first heard that story from you, let me tell you how I applied it. This is back when I was emailing out, when we would publish a new article, I would email out the article, and my audience was personal trainers. So I'd email the article to 60, 70, 80,000 personal trainers. And when you email something to somebody, especially like a 1,500-word article, you can't expect them to read it right then, which is a big problem when you're trying to create substantive, nuanced, valuable information. All the delivery methods of that information is generally somebody flicking around on the toilet, not really ready to actually consume that information.
Yeah.
And so I heard that story from you, and I started including in the emails, hey, when you're on a break from clients and you're sipping a coffee today, check this out.
Yeah.
And we saw Not what we saw was, yes, the page views of the article goes up. There's a lot of things that contribute to that, so that's a hard data point. But what we saw was that the reopens of the email went up a couple percentage points.
Yeah.
Which basically means somebody opened the email, then they closed it, then they went back and found the email and reopened it.
Yeah.
And so there's a fun application of that story for you.
Yeah, and what I love about that story is also, and you alluded to some of this earlier, but the power of metrics, right? Like if all we're measuring is do people open our email or not, do people view our content or not, those numbers may look great, but that's not really what we care about, right? And this is one of the challenges with social. I think a lot of people go, oh, we've got this many followers or this many views. Views don't matter, right? What matters are people engaging with the stuff, right? What's the dwell time like? Are they actually watching the video? If it's written content, are they reading it, right? We did a project recently where we looked at tens of thousands of pieces of online content, and not whether they grabbed attention, so not whether people opened the content or not, but how far down did they read, right? Looking across tens of thousands of articles, we can say, well, certain articles, the average person reads this far, and other articles, they read this far. Why? What about the way that it's written holds attention or doesn't hold attention, and how, by understanding that, can we write in ways that are more effective at holding attention? And so I think we really have to be very careful about what we measure, right? Metrics are almost like a spotlight. They shine attention on something. If that's what we want to optimize, great, but if it's not, right, we need to be careful because it encourages us to optimize whatever it's focused on.
Yes, a lot of what's going to be spoken about in the summit is that
Yeah.
is that idea of appropriate metrics. Just because something can be measured doesn't mean it matters. You mentioned social media.
Yeah.
I have an entire lesson in the book of you can try to be an influencer, creator, entertainer. That's cool. Or you can try to build a business. And one of the ways to do that might be leveraging online media. It might not.
Yeah.
The reality of it is these are two different games and they're both fine. But when you conflate the two is when you run into issues. And the data that Instagram, for example, is going to show you, their insights, helps you do better on Instagram. Becoming famous on Instagram may not align with your goals of building a better business.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
And neither is better or worse. It's just a matter of knowing what you're measuring.
Yeah.
And if you fail to do that, you're looking at the wrong data. God, I think about this with content all the time, man.
Yeah.
All the time. I think about this. What were a few things that got people to read more? Do you remember any of the?
Oh yeah, we talk about it in magic words. So certainly I remember. So emotions play a role, but in an interesting way. It's not about whether they're positive or not or negative or not. It's about two things. One, do they evoke arousal, which also drives sharing, by the way. So things like anger and anxiety, excitement lead people to read more. But also, are they associated with certainty or uncertainty? Right? Take anger and anxiety. Both of those are negative emotions. Both of them are high arousal emotions. But anger tends to be more a certain emotion. I know what I'm angry about. Whereas anxiety tends to be a more uncertain emotion. I'm not sure what's going to happen, and that uncertainty is upsetting. And we find that more uncertain content, whether through emotions or other means, even think about hope versus happiness, right? I'm hopeful this will happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm hopeful there's some uncertainty, is more likely to lead to longer reads because it evokes that uncertainty that encourages people to read more. If I don't know if it's going to rain today, I'm going to read more to find out. If I don't know if this will solve my problem, I'm going to continue consuming to find out. And beyond emotions, also some just simple writing things. Concrete language encourages continued reading. Familiar language encourages continued reading. So there are a number of simple ways. I think what I found most interesting about this work is we have this notion that, look, it's the topic we write about. If I'm writing about tips to get job interviews or become more influential on TikTok, that's going to get attention. Celebrity news gets attention. Climate change news is not going to get attention. It's about the topic we write about. But what's neat is we can control for the topic that's written about, right? We can use topic modeling to identify the themes in the articles and say, look, take two articles that are talking about the same themes. right? The way we write can have just as big of an impact as the theme that we write about. We have to be smart. We have to understand how writing drives engagement and use that writing, write the right ways. But it's not just that you're sort of born with a certain topic and if it's not engaging, you're screwed. We can make anything more engaging if we understand what drives that engagement.
Yeah. I think about some of my favorite authors, like Dave Eggers, for example, is one of my favorite authors. And I will read anything that he writes.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the topic is. What was the second example? You said that there were two examples that you would bring up.
Oh, yeah. So the other one is also a fun one, and that's just Geico's Hump Day, right? So, and this was a few years ago now, but insurance company Geico comes out with a piece of content, Camel walking around an office going, what day is it today? What day is it? Everyone ignores him. It's annoying Camel. Finally comes across this woman. He goes, what day is it? She goes, it's Hump Day. The Camel goes, woo, woo. And the ad goes, how happy are people who save money with Geico, happier than a camel on Hump Day. It's funny. It's not that funny. It's the second most shared ad of a couple years ago. And why I also love this, similar to what we just talked about, is again, we have this notion viral stuff depends on the topic, right? Tesla cars, new Apple iPhones, cool movies, lots of word of mouth. Insurance companies, zero word of mouth. Yet people are sharing an ad about insurance. Why? Well, you look at the data and there's a spike every 7 days. Spike, then it goes down, spike, then it goes down. You look closer, it's every Wednesday. Wednesday rolls around, it reminds people of Hump Day, reminds people to think about this piece of content, which reminds people to share it. And so it's not just about whether people like stuff, right? Sharing, engagement is not just do people like it, even choice. It's about are they thinking about it at the time of action.
I think about all of the different days, like January 2nd is National Personal Trainer Day. And I looked up one time all of the different dog days. There's like 78 or something different
there
dog
are.
days. And if you run like any business that has anything to do with dogs, you could just build your entire marketing calendar around the different
One of the dogs.
whatever dog day it is. Every single month has them. Some months the entire month is, whatever, foster dog month or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got 2 kids. I don't have dogs. Pretty much the same thing. Well, Jonah, look, man, this was great. Thank you so much
No
for
problem. Great to chat.
doing this. I love I love the fact that we could go very, very high level and then get very tactical with some examples and then go back high level again. And like I said, this is full circle. Always a joy, man.